The command deck of the Sovereign's Wrath hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled war machine. General Texavar stood before the massive viewscreen, his 6 arms folded behind his back, watching the blue marble of Earth rotate slowly beneath his fleet. The planet looked so fragile, so insignificant compared to the hundreds of worlds he had conquered in his 3-century military career. "General," his aide approached with measured steps, "the human delegation has arrived." Texvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Send them in. Let us see what pathetic offering these primitives bring to appease the hegemony." The delegation consisted of 3 humans, 2 men and 1 woman, dressed in simple clothing that seemed almost laughably informal for such an occasion. The eldest among them, a man with graying hair and calm eyes, stepped forward. "I am David Chen, representing Earth's United Government," he said, his voice steady despite standing before one of the galaxy's most feared military commanders. "We understand you've come for tribute." General Texavar descended from his command platform, his massive frame casting a shadow over the humans. At nearly 3 meters tall, with chitinous armor naturally grown from his exoskeleton, he was an intimidating figure that had made countless species surrender at first sight. "Indeed," Texavar's voice rumbled through the translation matrix. "Your world now belongs to the hegemony. You will provide us with half your planet's resources, a quarter of your population for labor and your military technology. This is not negotiable." David Chen nodded thoughtfully. "We expected such demands. However, we've brought something else instead, something far more valuable than anything you've mentioned." The general's 4 eyes narrowed. "You dare mock me? I have personally overseen the subjugation of 700 worlds. I have witnessed the fall of the crystalline empire and the dissolution of the quantum collective. What could your backward species possibly offer that I have not already claimed from greater civilizations?" "A story," David replied simply. The command deck fell silent except for the distant hum of the ship's engines. Several of Texavar's officers exchanged glances, their translator implant struggling to convey their commander's sudden confusion. Story?" The general's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation in his species. "Yes, but first may I ask you something, General? In your 3 centuries of conquest, what drives you? What is it that makes you continue, world after world, species after species?" Texavar's response was immediate, rehearsed. "Power. Order. The expansion of the hegemony brings stability to a chaotic universe." "And yet," David continued, his voice remaining conversational, "you've conquered 700 worlds. You command fleets that span star systems. You have power beyond the imagination of most beings. Are you fulfilled?" The question hung in the air like an unexploded ordnance. Texavar had expected begging, perhaps defiance, maybe even an attempt at bribery. He had not expected philosophy. "Fulfillment is irrelevant," he growled, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. David smiled. "That's where our story begins. 2,000 years ago there was a human named Marcus. He lived in a time when our species was divided into hundreds of small nations, constantly warring with each other. Marcus was a general too, not unlike yourself." Despite himself, Texavar found his attention captured. Something in the human's tone, the way he spoke, demanded listening. Marcus conquered territory after territory, accumulated wealth and slaves, commanded respect and fear. But the more he gained, the emptier he felt. Until one day, in a small village he had just conquered, he met an old woman who asked him a simple question. "What question?" The words escaped Texavar before he could stop them. She asked him, "What will you do when there are no more worlds to conquer?" Marcus had never considered this. So she told him about a different kind of conquest, the conquest of oneself. She spoke of finding meaning not in taking but in giving, not in commanding, but in serving something greater than oneself. David paused, studying the general's expression. Marcus spent the next 30 years of his life building instead of destroying. He established schools, created systems of governance that protected the weak, and fostered trade between former enemies. When he died, millions mourned him, not as a conqueror but as a liberator. The general's breathing had changed. His forearms, previously folded in authority, now hung at his sides. "But that's just one story," David continued. "Would you like to hear about Sarah Chen, a woman who saved her entire colony from starvation by developing new agricultural techniques? Or perhaps James Wright, who gave up his life to warn Earth about an incoming asteroid. Why are you telling me this? Texavar's voice was barely above a whisper. Because, General, you asked for tribute. These stories, they're the most precious thing our species possesses. They're why we've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. They're why we've reached for the stars. They remind us that our greatest victories aren't in what we take, but in what we give. David stepped closer, unafraid. You've conquered 700 worlds, but what have you built? What will beings remember of General Texavar in 1,000 years? That he was feared? Or that he chose to become something more? The massive alien stood motionless for long moments. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. I had not considered. It's not too late, General. You command vast resources. Countless beings look to you for leadership. You have the power to build something magnificent, not through conquest, but through inspiration. Slowly, deliberately, General Texavar lowered himself until he knelt before the human delegation. His officers gasped in shock, but he ignored them. Tell me more stories, he said quietly. Tell me about these humans who chose to build rather than destroy. David Chen smiled. We have many such stories, General. And if you're willing to listen, we have time to tell them all. And so began the most unlikely alliance in galactic history, not forged through surrender or conquest, but through the simple power of human stories that reminded even the mightiest warrior that there were things worth fighting for beyond victory itself. The tribute had been paid, but not in the way anyone expected.